Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel. And Tucker, we are here today to talk about PlayStation and Sony and all kinds of things of that nature. But before we do, as Tucker was gesturing earlier, down in the description of this video, you're going to find all number of things. You're going to find, most importantly, Tucker, you're going to find a link to our Discord server. Otherwise, I don't really care, but you can subscribe, you can like, ring the bell. Really, that's optional. The server, though, is mandatory.
Yeah.
But Tucker, we did the plugs, we did the
Sure.
intro. Your fucking baseball hand signals messed up my flow for a second, but we got there, we got through, and in the end, we made it into the meat of the discussion, which is, of course, Tucker, the fact that today Sony announced that they are reversing their decision to get rid of the online PSN connectivity for PS3 and Vita.
Yeah.
PSP is still getting shut down completely, which is
Exactly.
not any sort of a surprise, really, and that was never really the issue with the original story. So, Tucker, I don't even know what to think.
Yeah, this is definitely a really strange one because, especially in the way that it was presented on all the official PlayStation accounts, and I think Jim Ryan tweeted out something about it, just like, "Hey guys, we've decided not to." And it took how long was that? Like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that. Since it was initially, and it wasn't any really indication that they were thinking about this. It was a lot of people giving them crap about removing these stores, and now the decision is just hardline reversed, which is very fascinating.
Tucker, I don't think Sony deserves any credit for reversing this decision.
I don't either, no.
And I think it's bizarre that people are being like, yes, look at Sony go. What a great move today. Because I think
the choices were bad PR or good PR.
Well, also think about it this way for a second, right? This is them fixing a bad decision.
Yeah.
And doing it in a really poor way. Let's look over to what Microsoft is doing for a second. If you remember, they announced one morning that the price of Xbox Live Gold was going to double.
Yeah.
Not even 12 hours later, Phil Spencer had said that that's not going to happen. Sony released a clinical and automated email a month ago saying the stores are shutting down. Mum's the fucking word on the PlayStation blog. Mum's the word out of Jim Ryan.
Yeah.
Today, weeks later, they reversed the decision, and we're supposed to be excited that Sony did it. We're supposed to be like, oh, Mr. Sony, you're bad. No, it's ridiculous. No. Even in the context of reversing a bad decision, which I already don't think should really give you a lot of PR goodwill, they didn't do it right.
So, yeah, I mean, if you do compare it to Microsoft getting goodwill back from reversing their decision, there was a lot of community engagement with that. They're like, okay, look, we heard you. We heard that this is an issue. We didn't realize how big of a problem it would be. So let's balance this out. Let's explain our reasoning behind it. There was a whole community involvement around it. Yeah. And Sony is choosing the other path of just, oh, actually, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea to leave these stores online, which I think, as obviously, we didn't record a video about this, but we were certainly talking about it as it was happening, thinking, well, this is just bad for those consoles. It's bad for game preservation. It's not a great look on Sony, especially when Microsoft is doing so much for the preservation of their own digital stores and console history, stuff like that. And now they're back. The PSP going down, obviously, as you said, not the big issue there, but it is weird that they're shutting down one and not the others. Like, I'm sure there's not a lot of people using the PSP store. I was never going to claim that, but there's not a ton of people using the Vita store, if we're going to be 100% honest. But there's certainly a difference, and I do recognize that.
Yeah, there's a big difference, and it is where the PSP store is going to go down, considering it talks so intimately to PS3's store.
Yeah.
Which makes it weird that PS3 is staying up. Vita was really the egregious one.
Yes.
As stories came out, developers were in the midst of making Vita games, and then that report came out, and they had no fucking clue.
Yeah.
So they
messed up.
It's shockingly mismanaged.
Yeah.
So the fact that that's back, hopefully it means that developers can actually put the games out on Vita, because Sony had put an arbitrary date of like, okay, if you want your game on Vita, it needs to be up by X date if it's going to be here before 4 July. So hopefully that's completely removed. Hopefully this is sort of an indefinite thing. People can get back to Vita development, because there is an active Vita scene. It's not big, but there is an active Vita scene, and having these storefronts as an average games preservation enjoyer, It's good news.
It certainly is, yeah.
But Tucker, I kind of wanted to spin this out a little bit to
Sounds
just
good.
PlayStation in general.
Instead of just Sony, what the hell's going on?
Well, that's the theme of the discussion, but I think there's
The
more
thesis.
there's more to contextualize around the storefront because Sony has been having a really bad year, optically.
Yeah, they're certainly not. They're certainly on a little bit of a down low at the moment.
Especially Tucker, a great example of what's going to happen tomorrow, which is MLB The Show 21 is
Oh
going to be
yes.
releasing on Game Pass tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
which is yet just another example of PlayStation losing ground and
Mm-hmm.
losing ground in this situation with
Very directly.
a Sony Santa Monica
Yes.
game being released ostensibly for free to the Xbox community.
Is it Sony Santa Monica? Is that true? I thought it was
Sony San Diego.
Okay,
Thank you
yes.
for catching that. No. Corey Barlog is allegedly making God of War Ragnarok this year.
Not Major League Baseball, no.
No. And then Tucker, you have the Bloomberg report from Jason Schreier talking about a remake of The Last of Us.
Yeah, which we haven't really talked about a ton.
No.
That one was getting a lot of weird optics. I wouldn't say that's necessarily inherently bad, but there was some other extraneous information around that core Last of Us remake that was a little bit worse.
Yeah, the problem with that being, of course, the report talking about how PlayStation is shifting towards being focused on only their blockbusters, and the fact that this was being done by like a support studio who then got the project taken away from them and given to Naughty Dog, and then Sony Bend was not allowed to make Days Gone 2 because they had to help with Uncharted stuff, and then they forcibly were removed from the project because they didn't want their autonomy taken away. It's a fucking mess. And then you throw in stuff like announcing the new Jade Raymond studio with like just a black picture as a response to the Bethesda acquisition. You factor in, Japan studio being shuttered and restructured. Because why not? You factor in no backwards compatibility options when Microsoft is doing so much on that front. You factor in a really weak state of play that did not have any information on God of War or Horizon.
I legitimately forgot that happened until a couple days ago. I was scrolling through the Backlog Banter video list as I want to do occasionally, and I saw our live reaction and discussion to it. And I'm like, oh, that happened like 2 months ago, and I just, I did not remember.
So basically, Tucker, that laundry list should be evidence to, Sony is just in a bad place.
Yeah, and I think what we're just gonna have to see is if the summer with the E3 season coming around and new games starting to come out from I know they're not participating in E3.
Yes, that's important to know. They specifically
that's why I said season.
Yeah,
because I do believe that they'll still have states of play and announcements and things around the summer area, but they have the chance to win back some optics with the releases of games, because one of the big complaints about the PS5 at the moment is that there's not a ton of exclusive content to play on it. Of course, we've got Returnal coming up, we've got Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, so the games will start coming. That will balance that out, and then they have the chance to start announcing new things, changing up some things for the ecosystem, announcing things that do bring back some goodwill. But that's a very big wait and see thing for the company that does not put them in a good light at the moment.
Yeah, it's very weird. I am a PS5 owner, as the audience will know. I use my system very infrequently.
Yeah.
I have come to actually regret buying it at launch. I did get caught up in the 2019 Sony, which is night and fucking day different than the 2020 Sony is night and day different than the 2021 Sony. And I enjoyed my system at launch, but now I'm twiddling my thumbs essentially when I have to review a PS5 game. I turn it on then, and the game I sunk the most time into outside of review purposes on my PS5 is Resident Evil 4 this year.
Yeah. Oh. That's not a good sign.
No, but once we get Returnal, which I'm genuinely excited for, and Ratchet and Deathloop, which has been delayed, but eventually Deathloop.
Yeah.
And hoping that we actually get God of War and Horizon this year. There will be the games there, but it's contextualized within an ecosystem that's just not very exciting. Because when you think about a Sony that wants to remake The Last of Us, that's such a myopic view of why the PS4 generation was great.
Yeah.
Because the PS4 generation was not great because of its sequels.
Mhm.
Naughty Dog sequels are really the only counterpoint to that. Because if you
Yeah,
think about it,
reboots of like God of War and Ratchet and Clank notwithstanding, I do think
yeah.
that's certainly true. Yeah.
I mean, you look at God of War it shares some DNA, but it's so fundamentally different, right?
Yeah.
But you look at games like that really set the tone for the console. Games like Bloodborne,
Yeah.
games like Spider-Man, games like Ghost of Tsushima,
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Horizon Zero
Until
Dawn,
Dawn.
Until Dawn,
Yeah.
Days Gone.
Holy shit. A holy trinity of rhyming games there.
The point being, of course, and then you throw in smaller and more interesting scalable stuff. You know, your Detroits, your Gravity Rush 2s, all of these things.
Last
Your
Guardian.
Astros, your Last Guardians. It was not a console that was defined by Uncharted
Yeah.
and Gran Turismo and The Last of Us. It just wasn't.
No. Yeah.
Last of Us Part 2 is better than every one of those games combined, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that didn't define the system.
No,
So to
exactly.
see Sony pivot in this direction is weird and disappointing.
Yeah, and I think especially interesting considering that all of those games that you mentioned that were new IP for Sony or new spins on IP are some of the most successful games of Sony's history, of the games industry, of the last generation. They're doing well. They're pulling in new fans, even though they're not established IPs, even though, they are for the most part, blockbuster games was what we would consider, but they're trying new ideas. They're certainly expanding their repertoire a little bit and scaling that back. Because so far we have had a sequel to Spider-Man, we've got a sequel to Ratchet and Clank, we've got a sequel to God of War, and a sequel to Horizon. Those are our 4 big PS5 games. And I'm going to be interested to see when we start getting Sony first-party new IPs. I think that's really what's going to start exciting me the most. Of course, we talk about Returnal, but I do think that's a little bit smaller. It doesn't balance out the sequels. But it is interesting that they're changing so fundamentally in a way that is seemingly not making most of their fan base happy.
And it is important to note that the PS5 is selling very well.
Oh God, yeah.
When it's on store shelves, it does sell very well.
Yeah.
And we represent the most insular community possible of hardcore PlayStation fans. So we're of course speaking from our own myopic, position on the topic. But you look at the success, sales, and critical success of something like Ghost of Tsushima, I don't think we're going to get many Ghosts of Tsushimas or Horizon Zero Dawns on PS5.
Yeah.
Because Sony's first-party teams take a long time to make their games.
Yes,
right?
it's true.
And basically everybody is going to be tapped for a sequel now.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the main things is they set it up in the PS4 generation with all these new ideas, and people are thinking about and talking about, oh, what's Ghost of Tsushima 3 gonna be like? What are we gonna see from the God of War after the second one? And that's, I mean, it's an exciting mindset from the fact that those are all gonna be probably really great games, and it doesn't mean that the PS5 is gonna be lacking of content, but originality. There's a balance that you gotta put there.
Yeah. It's frustrating, especially when Sony is so unwilling to communicate to its player base and so unwilling to just hold an E3 press conference. Like you can't rely. Okay, maybe Sony's gonna have a fucking guy playing a flute for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're gonna have state of play. Maybe they're gonna have nothing. Even with Nintendo, Nintendo's gonna be back at E3 this year. There's something to look forward to, right? I don't know what I have to look forward to really in as a PS5 fan right now. I'm very excited for Returnal. I'm genuinely excited for Returnal. I am perfunctory. What's that word? Perfunctorily?
Sure, let's go with that. It's not what it is, but we'll go with it.
Whatever that is for Ratchet Rift Apart, because I like Ratchet fine, and I kind of want something more to play my PS5 and be like, wow, look at that SSD go,
Certainly is going, yeah.
But we don't even have like a Breath of the Wild 2 or Metroid Prime 4 or Bayonetta 3 to really look forward to,
Yeah, I mean, I think at the moment that's a God of War sequel, which we know only exists. We don't even have a release window. But I would say that counts considering how critically acclaimed and successful the original was.
I think that's fair to an extent, but I think the difference is you can pretty much extrapolate what Ragnarok is going to be, you know?
Yeah.
It hasn't been that long since the first God of War. It's probably going to be a very iterative sequel. It's a very narrative heavy experience, so we're going to
Yeah.
get more narrative, and also we're going to get it perhaps imminently, which means we got maybe 3-year development cycle. So either it's going to be a little bit shorter, like a Miles Morales, or it's going to just be more of the same.
Yeah.
Who knows? But when I look at something like a Metroid Prime 4, that's going to be big and ambitious in a new experience. I mean,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
the 4th Metroid Prime game, but it's going to be the first Metroid Prime game in like 12 years, you
Yeah.
know? So
And
I think it's a
I
big
was thinking
difference.
about that as we were listing off Sony's games and thinking about, okay, well, Nintendo, you know, it's a very big knock that people put against Nintendo is they lean very heavily on their established IPs, and they have done so for the Switch generation. There haven't been as many new IPs, and of course there are some, but the difference is that Nintendo, you can't really extrapolate what their next game in a series is going to be. I mean, of course there are some, but there's always a spin on them, and they're always still innovating even within their own series, which is something, you know, you still see a little bit with Sony's games, but they're definitely more iterative in terms of one-to-one gameplay transitions, especially because the stories are interconnected.
I agree. And also the other difference is that so many of those Sony games are third person, semi or
Yes.
completely open world action titles,
Yeah.
you know? Even if Nintendo is relying on the same stable of franchises, and to our chagrin, as we've talked about, literally re-releases of the same games,
Yep.
they're in such different styles and genres
Mhm.
that there's an inherent variety that Sony doesn't have, and that they have completely kneecapped by getting rid of Japan studio, which
Yeah.
is releasing so many interesting games.
We didn't
So
talk about that enough just in general as like an industry, I don't think. Is
yeah,
Japan Studio, I mean, they made Knack, which is a meme, but other than that, they were on I mean, if you just look back at their history, it's a
yeah.
ton of smaller but very iconic, important, creative Sony IPs.
And they were a great support team and publisher for really important games, whether you're talking Shadow of the Colossus or you're talking Bloodborne.
Yeah,
Even just
100%.
looking beyond their own internal projects, they were
Mhm.
really important to Japanese game development, which is clearly not important to Sony anymore, which is
Yeah,
also
it's
disappointing in its own right.
very interesting.
Basically, Tucker, I don't know, I'm kind of bummed.
It's unfortunate. I don't think it's gonna be an issue for a super long time. I think these
Yeah.
games are gonna start coming out, and I think more announcements of different things, even if it is
Sure.
something like finally seeing what a Last of Us remake is going to be, will bring back some goodwill. It'll certainly heighten my interest in the PlayStation ecosystem. At the moment, I am not a proud owner, but I'm a proud moocher offer of a PlayStation 5.
Fair.
But do I mooch off that PlayStation 5 almost at all? I mean, I played some Fall Guys last week. That was the first time I used it in a while, and I could have just done that on my PlayStation 4, which I use my PS4 more than I do the PS5, which is, you know, a very personal thing.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that even as a hardcore video game player, as someone who does invest in video games a lot, they haven't really pulled me in quite yet.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, it's gonna be a lot of wait and see.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we don't have to wait too long. Even if on Sacred Symbols, which is a PlayStation podcast I love listening to, they were talking about it would be a little bit corny, but what if they just did like the Marvel Phase announcement thing of studio logo, game
Holy
logo
shit.
underneath, and just laid out what people are working on, you know, to at least give some kind of a roadmap, you
We
know?
finally find out what Retro's working on.
God, I really hope that I don't even want to talk
Yeah,
Star
it's
Fox
not.
Grand Prix. Don't get me going. But Tucker, I'll have Returnal Impressions in 2 weeks. I don't know.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah, it actually is. I actually think that is a microcosm for what the PS5 needs more of. You know,
Mhm,
it
100%.
is a really great PlayStation team doing something genuinely different, both for its own, you know, skill set, but for the stable of PlayStation 5 exclusives overall.
Yeah.
So I really hope the game does well. It should not be $70, but that's how much money before tax will be taken out of my wallet 2 weeks from now. So
Yeah. But we will see you guys when that happens in 2 weeks. And of course, other videos in between. But
yes.
thank you very much for watching. As we said at the beginning, join our Discord, subscribe, like the video, all of that. And God, Sony, don't let this be a completely down year. That would be sad.
I can always get it up. So if you want to do that, I'm more than happy.
Can you reset your microphone?
Can you mind your own business?
Nope.